Tonight, a pet dog in Oshawa dies of bird flu, raising concerns around wider transmission.
If the virus changes and is more readily transmitted from birds to mammals, that would be problematic because it is such a severe infection.
We'll explain how the dog became the only case of its kind in Canada, what you need to know to keep your pet safe, and the likelihood of a human infection.
We are being forced into fear, and we cannot let fear win.
Plus, legislating safety for queer performers, the new NDP push to create zones around performance venues against intimidation and hate speech, how much violators would have to pay.
The problem with new and exciting opportunities is that the risks aren't necessarily clear to you.
And after a couple lost $400,000 in an alleged crypto scam, how Toronto police helped get a large chunk of their money back, and what you need to know to protect yourself. The threat of avian flu is hitting close to home tonight. A pet dog in Oshawa has died after a confirmed case of the potentially lethal infection. It is the only case of its kind in the country so far. From Durham to York and over into Peel, health officials across the GTA are on alert tonight after multiple confirmed avian flu cases in the region. Dale Manukduk begins our coverage tonight.
Canada's National Centre for Foreign Animal Disease confirmed on April 1st that a pet dog in Oshawa tested positive for avian influenza, commonly known as bird flu. The dog was found to have been infected after chewing on a wild goose. These pet owners weren't surprised.
The Malamute there, she likes to roll in dead carcasses and stuff like that. So like we walk the Bowmanville Creek, a lot of the fish die on the sides, and if I don't stay close to her, she'll want to roll in the dead fish and get all smelly, so I try to avoid that.
This is a retired duck hunter in her younger days.
It's unclear when the dog was in contact with the goose and where in Oshawa it happened. The dog showed what the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is calling respiratory system involvement, and further testing is underway.
And I don't think it's surprising considering the millions of birds that are internationally affected right now. Just by chance, we're eventually going to have some exposure from birds to mammals.
The federal agency is advising pet owners to not feed pet dogs or cats any raw meat from game birds or poultry, and to not allow pets to consume or play with dead wild birds found outside. In a statement to CBC Toronto, Ontario's chief vet says there is little evidence of sustained mammal-to-mammal spread. We continue to work closely with the Ministry of Health and the CFIA to monitor the situation, ensuring we have an informed approach about this aspect of the disease and its transmissibility.
The concern, of course, is that if the virus changes and is more readily transmitted from birds to mammals or between mammals, that would be problematic because it is such a severe infection.
Avian flu affects all birds, especially those that stay in flocks. Cases have been confirmed in Mississauga and Vaughan and suspected in Brampton and Markham. Currently, there's 205 confirmed or suspected positive samples in Ontario, and no domestically acquired human cases of avian influenza have been reported in Canada. The risk of human contacting avian influenza from a domestic pet is minor. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Oshawa.
In the States, former President Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 charges of falsifying business records today, charges that stem from hush money payments made to two women in 2016, including an adult film star. Tonight, he returned to his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, where he held a rally.
The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
You heard it there, Trump denying any wrongdoing. He says the investigation is a personal and political witch hunt. The alleged payoffs to the two women were made to cover up Trump's extramarital affairs during his first presidential campaign. Another payment was allegedly made to a Trump Tower doorman who claimed to have a story about a child the former president had fathered out of wedlock. Trump supporters and detractors rallied outside the courthouse in New York today, where he appeared earlier. He isn't due in court again until December. From the U.S. to here in Ontario, many drag performers have been feeling under threat. Some shows in Ontario have even been canceled over threats of violence. Tonight, there's a proposed piece of legislation aimed at protecting drag performers and their audiences in Ontario. Lorenda Redekop has that story.
We are being forced into fear, and we cannot let fear win. We will not let fear win.
Scarlett Bobo, a former contestant on Canada's Drag Race, was one of the drag performers at Queen's Park today, highlighting discrimination and threats.
I've had people throw beer bottles at me. I've had people run at me through the streets. I've had to run into restaurants and hide behind counters just to stay safe until the police arrive.
Today, NDP MPP Kristen Wong-Tam proposed a bill that would protect LGBTQ people, including drag performers.
There's been a dramatic spike in violence and discrimination.
I'm actually driving in Hamilton. We're heading to this amazing drag brunch performance by Crystal Quartz.
She highlighted the issue last December, en route to a drag show for a performer who faced threats. The bill calls for temporary community safety zones, 100 meters around performance sites, prohibiting intimidation and hate speech, with fines of up to $25,000. In Windsor last fall, a performance had to be cancelled due to safety concerns. Performers dressed as princesses were set to read stories to children. Similar shows have led to controversy across Canada and the U.S. Protesters arguing they're practicing free speech. Others say it goes too far, crossing into intimidation and hate speech.
They then started showing up to all of my events, screaming at parents and myself, saying they were groomers, pedophiles, and a bunch of other homophobic slurs to make everyone there feel unsafe to attend.
Wong-Tam urged the government to support her bill.
The private members bill will take years, and this government will know it. It will take years for it to pass. Will you expedite that process? Will you work with us to protect the community today?
The NDP compares it to the safety zones around abortion clinics. The government didn't make any promises.
Hate and intolerance against anyone in any form will never be tolerated by this government.
There is, of course, already a significant body of legislation that is in place to protect all communities.
But the government House leader did say this.
But specific to the bill, once the member has tabled the bill, we will give it due consideration as we do every private member's bill, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
It was tabled this afternoon. However, private members' bills rarely pass. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
The Leafs hosting the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight for the team's annual Pride Night game.
John, what does Pride Night mean to you and this team?
It's obviously a great night to celebrate and make everyone feel welcome.
Now, NHL Pride Nights have been controversial this season as some players have refused to wear Pride-themed jerseys. Tonight, the Leafs did not wear Pride jerseys, but the organization saying it's not done that at its past Pride Nights. Instead, players had rainbow tape on their sticks and decals on their helmets. Russian goaltender Ilya Samsonov did not, and it didn't go unnoticed. Toronto sports bar Peaches even refused to air tonight's game. The bar sang in response, queerness has a place in all sports.
See a women's exhibit being put into place, I think, is huge. I mean, it kind of speaks to the constant evolution of women's hockey, and it's great to see the game constantly growing.
The Hockey Hall of Fame unveiling a new exhibit today dedicated to trailblazers in women's hockey. In all, there are nearly 100 artifacts on display, jerseys, sticks, and skates from some of the most prominent players going as far back as 130 years. The exhibit opens on the eve of Women's World Hockey Championship, which gets underway tomorrow in Brampton. 6 degrees and cloudy as we look live at the city's skyline tonight. And the potential for wet weather is now with us. Let's get to Colette Kennedy for a first look at our weather forecast. Colette, what time does the severe weather that's coming our way begin?
Thanks, Chris. Well, yeah, just looking at the timing of this, of course, severe weather, active weather tonight stateside. But as we look into what's happening towards the Great Lakes and into Ontario, really, although there'll be some thunderstorms overnight tonight and tomorrow morning, the enhanced risk for the active weather or the stronger storms would be when the cold front comes in. So that's going to be tomorrow into the evening hours, the latter part of the day. But like I said, there'll be some thunderstorms embedded before that. The highest threat for tornadoes is stateside into the Ohio Valley. Don't worry, I'm going to take you in for a closer look. I mean, that's where the real setup is. But we do have a moderate risk for parts of Ontario, southwestern Ontario included in this, not so much the GTA, although isolated strong storms, certainly not out of the question, but the greatest risk is going to be from about the Bruce Peninsula along the eastern shores of Lake Huron back towards Sarnia and down towards Windsor. And that's just because of the timing. And especially if we get any sunshine tomorrow, any kind of that daytime going on with the heating from the sun and that energy, plus we're going to have the moisture and humidity, that can really help these storms to develop. So some of the embedded thunderstorms overnight tonight, getting some activity into the city tomorrow morning, wet roadways. You'll hear the rumble of thunder at times. Into the afternoon, another wave. But then it's going to be along that front late day here. That's where we have that chance. The timing's really crucial if they kind of hold together from the strong storm stateside to make it across the international borders, and also the lakes really play a part in this. But we'll be watching carefully for this active weather tomorrow. 5 degrees your low tonight, at least 15 tomorrow, and there'll be parts of the province into the 20s. I'll talk about that coming up.
All right, Colette, we'll talk to you in a little bit. Protesters rallied in Toronto today for better protections for undocumented migrants. Their demonstration coming just days after 8 migrants died while trying to cross into the U.S. from Canada. Ali Chiasson was at today's demonstration.
This is the Chaudhry family. These are some of the 8 people who died last week. This is a family of 4.
Faces of refugees who have recently died while undocumented are plastered on the door of a local MP's office, including the 8 people who died while trying to cross the St. Lawrence River in Quebec last Thursday.
As you can see, all of these are people who couldn't get their basic rights in this country and were forced to leave because Canada does not give people permanent resident status and therefore equal rights. The real issue here is that the federal government promised a regularization program, promised to give status to undocumented people, and he hasn't yet.
Leaving many with no choice but to resort to desperate and dangerous measures to find refuge elsewhere.
I think about if I was in their shoes, I would do the same thing.
The South Asian Legal Clinic acts on behalf of many people, like the Chaudhrys or Yordashi families, seeking status or in limbo while appealing their deportation, often living and working precariously, sometimes in violent situations, without social supports.
They had to make those choices, and in making those choices, they didn't make it. They died. And they didn't make it because we made it too hard for them.
Florin Yordashi, his wife, Christina, and 2 children were a Romani family who, up until recently, had been living in Scarborough under threat of deportation. Last week, they attempted to flee by illegally crossing the treacherous Canada-U.S. border near Akwesasne, Quebec, a common path for trafficking many things, including people. Florin died with his children's Canadian passports on him.
We need to hold our decision makers, our governments, to account, and what I want to say to people mostly is, in your everyday life, you are encountering these people. This isn't a theoretical discussion. Everywhere I go, there will be somebody who's undocumented or with precarious immigration status. These are the people you see every day, and we owe them the dignity that we all have.
Protesters outside the MP's office want the Trudeau government to end the Safe Third Country Agreement and ensure permanent resident status to all migrants. Today, they handed over a petition with 7,000 signatures in support. Meanwhile, the Canadian government says it's continuing to work on protections for undocumented workers who are, quote, contributing to Canadian communities. Ali Chiasson.
Welcome back. It's a familiar cry for help, but tonight the Daily Bread Food Bank says it's never been this bad. The number of clients it serves is at a crisis level, and it's not just happening in our city. Lisa Shing looks at what stakeholders say governments need to do to prevent people from needing to rely on food banks.
A few times a week, Sue Ellen Patchison heads out early and makes her way here, where she volunteers.
Good morning.
It's also where she gets a week's worth of rice and veggies.
With the food bank's help, we're able to eat meat 4 times a month.
According to one of Canada's largest food banks, there are more people like Patchison than ever before.
We are in a crisis.
Toronto's Daily Bread Food Bank saw more visits last month than ever in its 40-year history. With many incomes falling behind inflation, the food bank is calling on Ontario to top up social assistance.
We know the policies to be implemented. Now you need the leadership and courage to be able to implement those policies.
Some have criticized the federal government's new one-time grocery rebate for low-income earners as not going far enough.
Canada is strong economically. We have a strong balance sheet, but our resources aren't infinite.
Advocates say the best fix would be to tie social assistance to inflation.
It's always been clear that those income supports were insufficient. They've just gotten more insufficient over these last few months.
Researchers say provinces like New Brunswick, Quebec, and British Columbia are making some progress, while Nova Scotia and Ontario are lagging behind. Alberta has announced it will re-index its programs in its latest budget, but there's doubt that will happen fast enough.
The trends that we're seeing continue to be increased demand and decreased donations.
Even so, Patchison says she's lucky.
Most days we eat maybe one meal, occasionally 2 meals a day. There's a lot of people who are a lot worse off than I am, a lot worse off.
A stark reminder of just how much some are struggling. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a warning tonight from Toronto police after an elderly couple was scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Officers say they were targeted online and initially saw their investment grow significantly. Talia Ricci has more on what happened next and why experts say education is critical when it comes to protecting yourself and your money.
Police say the victims wanted to invest some of their savings, but the elderly couple ended up handing over $400,000 to an online scam.
This investigation revolved around a cryptocurrency investment scam. The scam took place, the complainant was solicited online.
Police say the man was asked to invest in an online platform called CryptoSeed.com and was persuaded to send funds via a legitimate cryptocurrency exchange to a crypto wallet provided by the scammer.
The suspect ended up soliciting him and provided him with details to a online website, and that website showed significant growth in his cryptocurrency investment. And when they wanted to withdraw those funds, the fees were generated. They said, you need to pay more. You need to pay fees for transferring it.
The particular problem is that the nature of crypto is that you can hold your assets in self-custody in your own wallet, and as a consequence of that, you are free to send them wherever you want. With this great freedom that you have comes also the responsibility that the problem that if you send it to the wrong person, it's just gone.
Police say they were able to recover a significant portion of the lost funds. It's an outcome that doesn't happen very often.
In essence, what you're looking at is a way of trading in money that is specifically meant to be obscured, right? And so that they were able to get that back is quite the win.
Police are warning that scams like this have been on the rise, and education is key.
If you're going to invest in cryptocurrency, my recommendation would be to contact the Ontario Securities Commission. They do have a website which shows a list of registered exchanges.
I think a lot of people are attracted to new and exciting opportunities. That's really normal. But the problem with new and exciting opportunities is that the risks aren't necessarily clear to you. So just taking a moment, stopping, thinking, asking yourself what you understand and what more you might want to understand can be really helpful for protecting yourself.
Police say this case is still under investigation and they're working to identify potential suspects. It's possible they're located in another country. Anyone who thinks they may have been targeted by a similar scam is asked to contact police. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
A good amount of rain is expected tomorrow in our region. Let's get back to Colette now for a look at the long-range forecast. And Colette, we just have to get through the next couple of days of rough weather before things are looking nice for the weekend.
Yeah, it really is this timing that we have to get through tonight and tomorrow, and then things improve dramatically. And I talked a lot earlier in the show about the severe weather risk in terms of thunderstorms, but also really active weather in a more wintry form into eastern Ontario and northeastern Ontario. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Strong winds, small hail, isolated tornadoes, the possibilities there. I don't want anyone to be too concerned, but I do want you to just be aware tomorrow. And again, it's kind of the Bruce Peninsula along the shores of Lake Huron back towards Sarnia and Windsor where we'd have the greatest chance of that. Now, along the warm front with this, where we're going to have that very moist air, warmer air spilling over some of that colder air at the surface. I mean, there have been a lot of Arctic temperatures further north. Where that all comes together, that's where the freezing rain occurs. And there's really a chance this could be prolonged. So getting into some significant buildup, you add the ice and the weight of that, plus some winds in there, and then really you could see some tree limbs coming down, power lines coming down. So power outages could be a real concern. Obviously, poor roadways there too. So look at all this area, a very large area in pink where we're talking about freezing rain or ice pellets. There's the thunderstorm threat. And of course, I said that we'll see them, but the severe risk is heightened later in the day as the front comes through. And that's why these kind of areas I'm pinpointing where we could really see some of the damaging wind and perhaps some small hail there. But behind this, there it is, that clearing. We just have to get through that, and we get into Thursday, clearing into the afternoon especially, and then a setup where we have sun as we're heading into the long weekend. The amounts of rainfall, you'll see you get into the yellows and browns here into eastern Ontario, but keeping in mind that's the water equivalent with some of that ice, plus rain that will come in there. Otherwise, the amounts, locally, you'll get heavier amounts with the thunderstorms hitting. And look at that ice accretion. Yeah, we could see some buildup, real buildup there, 10 millimeters, 20 millimeters possible. That's really not a good looking situation there in eastern Ontario. Overnight temperature, a low near 4 degrees for Toronto, 8 for Windsor. And there's a look at that colder air, right? And why we're seeing the more wintry conditions with this spring storm into that area. 15 tomorrow, we're going to see a very wide range of temperatures, probably going to be in the low 20s, about 22 degrees for Windsor, I would expect. High teens quite likely in the Niagara region, and I'm putting us at 15 for Toronto. We'll see this real range, but all on the mild side. Then Thursday looks good. Sky conditions 11 degrees, a little cooler, but not bad. I doubt anyone will be complaining as we head towards the Easter weekend, Chris.
No, that looks like a great long weekend. Thanks, Colette. And that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Marivelle Tarouk has you covered tomorrow at 6, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. But before we go, we told you last night about Skuna, the endangered green sea turtle. She is the newest resident at Ripley's Aquarium. Well, tonight, we've got video for you of Skuna checking out her new home. Enjoy that. Have a great night, everybody.